Good evening. Welcome to Legal Tech Live. This is episode 63. Tonight we are joined by Jessica Hoffmann. Jessica is the CEO of FamilyDocket. So our topic tonight will be family law. I've talked to Jessica. She's got some really interesting stuff going on with this company, FamilyDocket. A little background on Jessica. Jessica Hoffmann is a licensed attorney and serves as the Chief Strategy Officer of Clark Hill Strasburger. Jessica plays an important leadership role in the development and execution of the firm's strategic plan. She's also served as Managing Director and Chief Operating Officer since 2008. Prior to that, oversaw marketing and human resources. She was also a practicing attorney for the firm between 2002 and 2006, primarily in the professional liability area. And one of the things that you told me when we talked previously, Jessica, is that Clark Hill was actually a huge supporter of the FamilyDocket idea and allowed you to almost incubate the idea, if I can say that, if that's the correct terminology, while you were still working with them before FamilyDocket became what it is today. Is that right?
That's right. I was working as the chief operating officer at the time of Strasburger & Price, which is about a 200-person Texas-based law firm, when I kind of developed the idea in tandem with my husband. And so we started working on it on the side. And then when Clark Hill combined with Strasburger in April of 2018, the firm asked me to stay on board in a role as Chief Strategy Officer, and I opted to do that, but to do that on a part-time basis so that I could continue to go down the path of FamilyDocket and see where that led, and that's where we are today.
That's fantastic that they were forward thinking enough to do that. I love to hear those stories about law firms, because so often in discussions we have on this show and just in legal tech generally, we hear that law firms, are where innovation goes to die, et cetera. And I get that, but that's a real generalized statement. So they allowed you to kind of incubate this or work on this with your husband while you were working on the firm. And what did you work on? What is FamilyDocket? Did you have any family law background before you did FamilyDocket? Because it sounds like you were in an administrative position mostly since you stopped practicing in the professional liability field.
Yeah, so not personally. My husband is in the family law space. So he's a board certified family attorney here in Texas. He's a member of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers. And I watched him, struggle with some of the differences that family law has that might be unique to it. All these folks are individual clients, not big companies. Most of them, it's their first time in litigation, hopefully their only time in litigation. And a divorce really is a litigation. You have to file something with the court. And then beyond that, it's super highly emotional charge. So you have a lot of cases where they might be highly emotional, but you might still be dealing with companies or people who are going to get more experience with litigation. But family law is that perfect confluence of first time people involved with the court system, highly charged emotions, and they're spending their personal money to prosecute the case. And there's one pie that has to be divided. And so it was really interesting watching him. And in particular, what I noticed was, especially once we started having a family, that right about the time that our kids are finally in bed and now it's time that we could potentially, have a glass of wine and have adult time and that kind of thing, his phone would start to implode. Sometimes with phone calls, but very often with text messages. And a lot of times those text messages, the content was actually screenshotted photographs from the client of their text message correspondence with their ex.
Right.
So stuff like, can you believe she's saying this? She's telling me she's not going to bring the kids tomorrow. Or can you believe he's saying, he's not going to let me live in the house, or whatever it was. And he would be frustrated because it was such a weird amount of information. It wasn't enough. You couldn't see what had happened before. You couldn't see what happened after. You didn't necessarily know what time all of this had occurred. And you can just imagine that both husband and wife are sitting there doing the same thing. both sending it to their lawyers, both spending that time, and then the lawyers having the same reaction and also both spending time trying to deal with those messages. And so my husband sometimes at the last minute would be like, I have a hearing tomorrow on this case. I've got to figure out how to get this text message off my phone, printed, and now you're paying me to be kind of like a low-level document manager, and the strategy that I had for tomorrow is blown because you look bad actually in these messages, not the other way around, that kind of thing. So we went about trying to explore whether or not there was a way that we could capture that text message communication in a more automated, seamless way so that the clients can communicate with each other the way they always have been, including when the relationship was healthy and going well, and not spend all that extra time themselves or pay lawyers to be dealing with that. And that was really the birth of the idea for FamilyDocket.
So how does this because Erin Levine is here with us watching, and Erin, let us know when you can start hearing this. She's in the family law space. She's a good friend. Casey from Divorceify was on the show, and she's the one who put us in touch. And she said that what she told me was about this capturing of the text messages, which is something that we haven't had on any of the other episodes, 62 of the actual capturing of the text messages. We've had text related interactions between lawyer and client, and some great stuff happening in that area, but we didn't have this capturing of the text messages, which is really, really kind of integral to the family law practice. Because if I'm working on a massive merger and acquisition, chances are I'm not texting my lawyer at midnight because I'm sweating it. Or if I am, it's because we're doing due diligence at the end of it and we're all working really hard. But the really emotionally charged text messages that seem to be interfering with you and your husband's life, in the need to capture those was not something we'd done. And that, how does that work in the application itself?
So once both parties register for the application, and they can also be connected with their lawyers on the application, there's other features, but once both parties are on the application, they can choose to link their cases. Okay. And when they link those cases, a couple of features get turned on. One of those features is the ability to capture text messages on a go-forward basis. And essentially, we link their unique cell phone numbers together such that the message correspondence between those two numbers is linked by a third number. So they take one step, program that new number into their phone. Wife texts that number, husband receives it on his phone, just like in any of your other messages. He responds or texts that same number and she gets it. It's a one-to-one. Okay. So you can feel safe texting your mother, girlfriend, coworker, etc. But you're really in your text message application. So what we noticed was happening with some of the other tools. So
I would actually be in my iMessage when this is going on. Oh, yeah. Okay, very cool.
And that's the thing that we noticed. So we do have the ability that if you launch FamilyDocket on your phone or on your computer, you can send a message through the application. So I'm signed in, I'm logged in as Jessica Hoffmann, I could send a message. But that's not practical. That's not what people are doing. And so what we noticed and what my husband had struggled with is there are other applications out there that have a lot of, interesting features, but what they didn't have is they didn't have the ability to capture text. So someone's running late for soccer practice, they're not launching a separate application telling you they're running late, and you're not checking that separate application. Right. Noticing they want to text because they're also texting their mom saying, hey, can you stay later tonight because I've got work to do, and those kinds of things. There's this domino effect. And then once that communication is taken off onto text, it's just so much more natural to reply. Oh, and hey, by the way, don't forget Charlie's backpack. And oh, by the way, Johnny's going to the birthday party, make sure he doesn't eat the cake because he's allergic to eggs. And all that stuff starts happening offline.
Okay, so you and I are going through a divorce, for example, and does your number in my phone become this FamilyDocket, this other number? Is that how I view it, or
So what we suggest, and we have kind of a step-by-step process for the clients, we suggest they program what we call the family docket number as a additional number for you in their phone. So like you might have an office number, a cell phone number, it becomes a third number. So we get the question quite a bit, well, what if they work around it? What if they text just direct? Well, there's two things. One, you can screenshot that and actually forward it to the correct number and say, hey, please keep this in the chain. And then that picture is then part of your text message history. It's part of the overall communication. You have it. Someone might make a mistake. If they try to work around it intentionally, it's also a way to kind of push them back onto the right track. I would love to say we can 100% catch that, but if someone wants to work around any of these tools, they can, right? They can send a mean note and leave it under your porch. They can say something nasty that no one hears. The idea is these folks are just trying to communicate. It is important to capture it because sometimes things go off the rails and you want to be able to look back and see what people agreed to or see what's going on. And oftentimes the feedback that we've had is not only does communication tend to get better because they know that it's kind of in their in the back of their mind that it is being watched, that people do eventually kind of go back to being what I would call normal because they're not launching that normal application. They're just in their text and they do those shorthands and they really just communicate in their natural way. And for the most part, that's positive. You occasionally have the person whose behavior, might not be as good when they think, oh, I forgot that Big Brother was watching. But at least in that case, you have a really easy way of getting those messages to your lawyer. And I have seen, my husband is a user, and I have other users as well, but I see him and he's actually had calls from clients being like, oh my God, he's doing this. And he can literally pull it up in real time on his phone or on a desktop, but he does it on his phone most of the time and look at what's happening and coach them through what they should say, or, hey, don't say that again. You're looking bad. Right. The real-time coaching can be very valuable.
That's interesting. And I like what you said. You actually answered one of my questions, but you covered that now that it's being monitored or could potentially be monitored, the communication has tended to improve. Is that is a common thing that you've been seeing?
It is. And in fact, it's kind of funny. I was, at my child's school, and I had a woman approach me. I'm a boy mom, she's a girl mom, and she said, I'm using your tool. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize you were going through a divorce. And she said, yeah, and we were just struggling with communication and I didn't know what to do. And I asked my lawyers and they recommended one of two things, and yours was one. And she had seen me post on Facebook and she had told her lawyers that they text. And so the lawyer said, well, given that, this is what you should use. And she said that all around the communication got better. So that was really interesting because I didn't even know that someone I had a very minor connection to in terms of our kids going to the same school was having this positive experience. So that was such a neat thing to hear in person. You so rarely get that from the client users. Right. Also my lawyer users, who I really think of as my clients initially, right. Lawyers. So that was a good day for FamilyDocket and for me.
That is, and that's the nice thing. Almost everybody that I know in the family law category of legal technology, almost all of it is improving the divorce experience, the custody experience, the co-parenting experience, and trying to make things a little bit easier. So it's like we've got this whole generation of lawyers who are tired of the fight as well, as well as the clients being tired of the fight. So that is a really interesting anecdote that the communication's improving almost by having a monitor or knowing in the background, okay, how's this going to impact my case that I'm dealing with? So that's interesting.
Sorry, one of the things that's interesting about that, when you were talking about the folks in family law trying to make it easier, I do see that, and I think a lot of them start to see themselves as almost like a coach in a way, because yes, we're trying to get you through this divorce process. legally, but I also know, like, you need to start looking at your finances differently. You need to maybe go back into the workforce depending on what's been happening and all these different things. And there's all these high emotions, and the lawyers are is basically the first line of that. So I definitely hear my lawyer clients talking about, they're really counseling their clients about things and what they should do. And one of the interesting things that the client I mentioned earlier said, I wish my lawyer had told me from the beginning. I didn't know anything like this existed. So I think our communication and the entire process would have been smoother from the beginning had we started on that. And again, that was a fun thing to hear. But I think the lawyers are in this really unique position in family law because of some of the things we discussed earlier about these individuals not being familiar with litigation, that they can really impact how short the timeline is, how easy it is, how much money is spent, how well the client comes out emotionally, how much fight there really had to be. And then all the other things that obviously have to get worked out, like the finances and the child custody. We know that's going to happen, but there's a lot that goes around, and the easier that folks can make it for everybody from the beginning, I think the better everybody feels about the process.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting because we all know the horror stories from divorce or just child custody, if that's the case. And we also know that if communication is improved and less adversarial in nature, then that's going to make the entire process run more smoothly. So that's really interesting. So, and thank you, Sujesh Krishnan and Aaron Levine, for watching. If you guys have any questions for Jessica, our guest is Jessica Hoffmann. Jessica is the CEO of FamilyDocket. Jessica, if I'm looking over here, it's not because I'm ignoring you. I'm looking at another monitor. So tell us what else FamilyDocket does, because I think we spent quite a bit of time on this, being able to recover the text and have the attorneys actually view the texts within the app while they're taking place, or review them the next day and more monitor. And I think that's great. I think it's a necessity for family law, but you also do some other things, correct?
We do. So what we also noticed about family law that was unique is many of these practitioners are in 1s, 2s, and 3s. You've got your few big firms in some of your bigger cities, and even some of one of the largest firms in Texas is basically 35 lawyers, and that's the biggest one. And Texas is one of the biggest legal markets. So when you think about that, most of these folks, even if they're at what you might call a big firm, it's 8 to 10 lawyers. So the technology tools that they have and the expenses that they have, they don't have the same institutional clients paying the bill. So they struggle, I think, some on the technology side. So we designed that this system is not only a portal and a communication tool for the clients, so they can send in-app messages when they're logged in, they can use the text message tool, they can submit to each other expenses to be reimbursed. But similarly, the lawyers have a view and they can share documents back and forth with the clients. They can send tasks to the clients to be completed. A common thing would be at the very beginning of any case. Most of the time, lawyers will ask clients for a list of information to start to gather and to complete this financial information statement that tells me a little about what assets you have and what expenses you have, and that helps to set me, in the right direction in looking at your case. So they can do all of that as a tool for the client, rather than what happens a lot in family law is, oh, here's a box of documents from one client, here's a flash drive from another, let's use Dropbox, which sometimes a lot of those tools people think are more secure than they might be from a HIPAA and other types of compliance perspective. And we are HIPAA compliant, and actually in Texas there are some more stringent rules called Texas House Bill 300, so we're compliant with that as well. So there's some other features that are really helpful, and all of it is very mobile compatible, because we recognize, again, two things about family law. These lawyers are the most mobile of any other practice. They are in and out of the court all the time. They're in and out of client meetings all the time, and mediations. Probably, the only specialty other than maybe criminal law where you have that much time in court and away from the office. And then the clients also tend to be doing their divorce work from their phones.
Mm.
and mobile devices. A lot of times clients can't access certain websites or do certain things at their jobs. They might be in an open work environment. They may be a physician that doesn't, sit at a computer. They may travel internationally and be on different time zones. They may be a full-time parent who has kids during the day and can only look at this stuff at night. So everything is very compatible with mobile. So you can pull up documents. So if a lawyer's sitting at a docket call waiting for their hearing, they could be looking at documents for the case they're there for, or for another case and review what's been happening. We've had, pictures, audio calls, video, obviously PDF, Excel, all those types of file types the site will accept as uploads.
Wow, that's it does quite a bit. So let's unpack a little bit about that. So it does serve as a portal for the client. And what kind of usage are you getting? As opposed, the capturing of the text is huge. Mm-hmm. Are you getting heavy usage, if you can share? I imagine that gets the most usage, but how are the other features being used? Are they pretty heavily used, or is it primarily people using the service for the text capturing?
So I would say most of the clients fall into one of two buckets. Either they're on it almost solely for the text capture. Maybe the court has ordered that. We have several parts of Texas that are ordering that already, or by agreement, at the end of a case or during mediation, temporary orders, people are agreeing. So they're starting it from that perspective, as opposed to the lawyer saying, hey, let's use this tool. The second set of clients I have, it's more lawyer driven, and the lawyers are saying, hey, this is a tool I use, and let me tell you why it's valuable. We can exchange information, it's secure, you're gonna have access to it forever. And by the way, all these documents, like your tax statements that I'm asking from you, you're gonna need those at the end of the year. And you're gonna need those when you need to qualify for a mortgage on your own. And you're gonna need these when you go to get a new financial advisor. So all that stuff that they're gathering for their lawyer, if they gather it in this kind of unorganized fashion, and send it in a unique way that kind of just goes to their lawyer, they end up having to go back and re-find all that stuff. But if they know all of this stuff is up on FamilyDocket, with the click of a button, they can choose those 3 documents they want and export them and email them to the next professional provider they might need. So that's been one way that some of our lawyers have started, and they actually start potentially with no intention of using the messaging. But then when the other side gets a lawyer and is represented, they have a conversation and say, hey, I think that this would be helpful in this case because there's either a communication problem or they're texting all the time. What do you think about using it?
Excellent. Okay, good. And Erin says it's a great platform, and she also says, hi, Jessica. So I'm sure you guys know each other. So what is who pays for this? Does the client pay for it? Does the attorney have to pay for the app and bill it to the client? How does that work?
So right now, the way we're set up is for a pass through to the client. So a lawyer can invite a client to participate. So the lawyer can say, hey, Nick, this is how I work. I'm going to send you an invite for FamilyDocket. When you go and complete registration, onboarding, you would pay the fee at that time. Okay. We do have promo codes and things like that we could give a lawyer. So sometimes a lawyer does want to pay for it and not pass it through. So we can give them a promo code to give to their client and then bill the lawyer. But we do like to have that one-on-one connection with the client, because oftentimes they are ordered to use the case or to use the tool from the communication standpoint beyond the pendency of the divorce. Okay. So you want to have that individual connection where they have their own login, their own information, and they are connected through us. And then the benefit for the lawyer is all of their cases are listed. When they go to log in, they see all of their clients, and they just choose and toggle between who they want to look at. And for those who might be at a firm with multiple people, you can easily choose who you view. So let's say you're an associate, you work for 2 partners, but you don't handle every matter for both partners. Your view on FamilyDocket, you might just see the Smith and Jones and Hoffmann case, not necessarily all cases that are on it. So you're not kind of seeing clutter.
Okay. All right. And what is the monthly? So is it monthly subscription? Is it per case? Is it I mean, it wouldn't make sense per case for the client. So does the client have to
It's an annual
annual
subscription.
subscription?
It's $129,
Okay.
which is a little bit more expensive than a tool like Our Family Wizard. They do not capture text, and there is an additional expense for that. And so rather than kind of doing onesie twosies on that, that's an all-in. There are no other charges. There are a lot of apps that talk about being free but they charge you later. They charge you if you get to a certain size. You try to download. This is an all-in.
And that's for lawyer and client. Either lawyer pays $129 a year.
Lawyers, there's no fee for the lawyers right now. It's just
okay.
It's a pass-through to the client. The idea is if it saves your lawyer, 15 minutes of time, you have saved your money.
You saved your money. Yeah. No, I think it's a fair, I mean, if you talk about, and I don't know what the cost for a divorce, contested divorce is in Dallas, but it's, between 15 and 25,000 or something here in California. That's just the average. Yeah. So if adding $129 is nothing.
Yeah, the average nationally, I think, is something like 12,000, and not even for contested, to just file and do your paperwork. So I think that does include some of these, kind of what I'll call a robo-filing divorce, where you may or may not be getting the good legal advice that you need. I do think tools like the ones that Aaron and others are developing, where you're still getting advice. You're still getting advice, but you're getting it in a more technology-driven way to save you that money, makes a lot of sense. But if you look at a lawyer's hourly rate, I would say, anywhere between $250 and $500 is a very normal range.
Very, very normal range. And that's, across the board, I think, in most states, certainly Texas and California, those are probably pretty normal ranges. And 250 is probably on the low end. Really low end. I think that for California now, that would have to be in a pretty rural community for somebody to be charging $250 an hour. So let's talk about adoption of this. How are you building it out? How are you, what's the financing, the funding, what's go to market? How have you done all that?
So we had basically a convertible debt raise that we did. We have some actually large legal technology folks that y'all would recognize, but I don't feel comfortable sharing, that invested in us. And then we also, friends and family and folks that know us invested in us. And, so we built out the platform. We did some, what I would call pre-soft, marketing of talking with folks, mainly in the Dallas legal community, just because that's where we were from. So we had a lot of the family lawyers, folks that were parenting facilitators, and other types of folks that touch family law, including judges, sit through demos and give us a little bit of feedback on what features it should have, not have, ease of use, things that they thought might be missing from other tools. And we took all of that feedback, and we had kind of a regular cycle of communication with that group.
Okay.
And then when we launched kind of middle of last year, it's, basically it's initially me going, shaking hands, doing demos, talking to the judges, getting our name out there. The tech piece of it, everyone loves. I mean, it's beautiful, it's slick, it works. They love the idea of it. As anyone in legal technology knows, adoption is slow. So I have people that tell me regularly, oh my gosh, this is life-changing. I'm going to put all of my clients on it like immediately. And it just doesn't happen as fast as that. I wish it did. That would be beautiful. But that's just not reality. Everyone is changing their behavior a little bit. The ones that I've seen where the most success has come from courts ordering it, from lawyers who have already had a case on it. So they take that baby step of putting a client on it, and then they see how powerful it is, which sometimes takes a couple of months till they have that reason to understand, need that for court, or, that kind of thing. Or client driven. We have had clients ask for something. Sometimes they've asked specifically if they've heard about us, but oftentimes they ask for something. I need something, help me. Then the lawyers think to suggest it. And that's one of the things that I would be interested in from the community generally is, why are we waiting for the clients to drive this? This should be something, not just for FamilyDocket, but for other things. Let's take control of this in the intake meeting. When they're interviewing you, talk about the things that you're doing differently that are going to save them money and make the case more successful. I think you're going to be more likely to land that client. And I think if you're connected to a client through something like FamilyDocket, when 30% of cases go back for some sort of modification of child support or custody, if you're already still connected through FamilyDocket, you already have all these shared documents together, the communications are all there, they're going to be much more likely to come back to you than to go down the street and hire somebody else. And if they did, they'd have to give them a bunch of information that you know, in theory already have.
Right. Yeah. It's really interesting for those of you watching live and for replay viewers. That's 63 episodes in a row that the slow adoption has come up. I
like to, you know, I wish I could say differently than I have the magic sauce. Being in law firm administration for a commercial, like a large commercial firm, we had slow adoption of things that we pushed for our lawyers, that we bought and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on. And I think it's lawyers, and that's part of it.
Yeah.
And then part of it, I think, is just any sort of change. You know, you have to get that momentum, and it takes a lot longer for those of us on the ground floor to feel that momentum. And then I think, you know, once it starts,
and it's got to be in their workflow too, right? Like it's got it, which takes some getting used to, changing your workflow a little bit. Okay, I'm using FamilyDocket now, and now it's part of what I do, and now it's easy. Can you share anything? Are you able to share, or do you want to share anything about numbers of users, or is that all proprietary? Have you? You can even say
that's proprietary. I will say we are still primarily based in Texas.
Okay.
I was actually at an ABA family law. There's a CLE going on in Austin right now, and I was down there last night, and I was talking to lawyers from across the country because there's no reason we can't be national. But one of the things that is important with any sort of tool like this that you want to be able to use to prove to the court that something did or didn't happen, having some validity and understanding from the courts, as well as from what I would consider to be, you know, the reputable lawyers in town, those thought leaders that people know. So we have really thought about kind of a hub and spokes model of trying to saturate this particular market as a start. Rather than having, you know, one user here and one user there, and then, you know, maybe they're not as successful when they go to the court and the judge doesn't, you know, understand what the tool is or how secure it is and that it can't be modified. So that's been our process, and I think that does make sense. If we had a huge, you know, influx from investors or other things, we might be able to, you know, kind of splash out a lot more nationally. But in this kind of environment, it really is a face-to-face process and demo of what the tool can do, how it's different, and how it's secure. So that it is a more timely, time consuming process.
All right. Interesting. So after Texas, what is there a target state that you're thinking that where you'd like to launch into next? Because I don't know, it's similar jurisdictionally, it's similar to Texas, or population wise or something like that. What do you look at for after Texas?
So we know pretty much from top to bottom where the most divorces occur. Texas has about 8% nationally of all the divorces. You're probably not surprised that New York, California, Illinois, Ohio, Florida, you know, are next because it's based on where population is.
Right.
So that really would be our plan. You know, you're not going to go into Wyoming first. But there really aren't national family law practices. There's maybe one firm that does have offices kind of spread a little bit, but they're really the only one. And it's because of the jurisdictional issues and some of those things. So we can't take a law firm approach to say, hey, we're going to go to this firm and that's going to get us everywhere if we got that firm. But we do look at, I try to do a lot of research about who are the thought leaders in each office, you know, who, and not the accolades that are pay for play, but who really is, you know, whose name are you seeing over and over again in terms of speaking, writing, the right organizations that they're involved in, the leadership in the ABA. That's why I was down, you know, in Austin. So I look for those people, because if those people are adopting, they typically have the right clientele. They're going to use it again and again. They're going to see the value.
Right. Yeah. You're not looking for the AV rated lawyer and thinking that that means anything, because as a lawyer, I still don't know what it means. I mean to look it up about once every 2 or 3 years, but
so we tend to look at things like even like board certification, right? I mean,
good.
They have
Okay.
To pass, they have to have had peer reviews. They have to be qualified in certain ways. They have to have practiced long enough. That's an easy one to say. That's a good place to start.
Good. Okay. And so are you primarily Dallas, Austin, or are you pretty much getting all over Texas at this point?
We are, I would say, you know, for sure Dallas, and then, you know, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, really trying to hit those. Texas is so big. I mean, you know, even some of what you might consider smaller towns are really not that small. Dallas, Fort Worth, I really consider to be the same kind of geographically.
Right.
And then Houston and San Antonio are 3 of the top 10 cities population-wise in the country. So I'm really focusing there. And then in the legal community in Austin, and that's also, you know, our capital. So there's a lot that happens there.
Right. So is this you traveling all over the place, mostly on your own in the startup journey? Is that a lot of it right now?
Yeah, it's travel or phone. I do a lot of phone, you know, and kind of video share screen demos, because it's convenient for them. Oftentimes, you know, they don't actually know when exactly they're going to come up for air. I go to different conferences and network, and I'll do demos there, though. I have not found, and again, interested in community feedback, that actually doing like the big table for $5,000 has necessarily been the best bang for my buck. The best thing for me has been meeting with the right people who then introduce me to the other right people. And that one-to-one personal relationship and introduction has done way more for me than, you know, having giveaways on my table and a computer screen.
Right.
Same people that come by and get the giveaway every time that I don't necessarily know are going to ever be a client.
Right. Right. Yeah. I've never believed in the table myself. I think it takes a huge budget to be able to put a table somewhere. And I think a lot of people come by for swag and have zero interest in what you're selling. I think if you've got enough money to do it, being at all those conferences is great, but I've just never seen it, in my experience, really pay off.
So, I think there's creative ways to be at the conferences. You know, again, it doesn't have to just be the table. There's creative ways to get time with people. I also speak and write quite a bit. So I'm a lawyer, but obviously by education, training, and practice for some time. So a lot of the things that I do is I try to tie in a legal tech theme with something else. So it's not a family docket demonstration. Family docket may not come up at all. I did a presentation over the summer with another family lawyer on basically privacy rights and technology and how that impacts family law. And so, you know, interestingly, there's case law that, you know, basically says this is a computer and it is mine. And even if I'm in the shower and you're my husband and you might think it's community property, if you had to put a passcode to get into this, no, like you violated my privacy. And if you send that to your lawyer can't use it either because you obtained it illegally. So we talk about things like that people may not realize, right? Like this, we all tend to know what you can record or not record and things like that. But the more advanced that technology becomes and the more we wear it and all these different things, people don't know how to use it. So I'll speak and write on those topics a lot. And I have, you know, probably 3 things in October that I'm doing. And that's a way to kind of build the reputation for the company of, you know, understanding these issues and being able to be on top of them.
Yeah, I like that. And I think it's the best. It is one of the best ways to communicate value without doing a hard sale. So here I am talking about really pertinent information, and I happen to be from FamilyDocket.
Right.
I think that's the best way to do it. Chris Canjero in the community says hello, and he says, what are some of the long-term benefits of the platform where children are involved in drawn-out custody battles? And I think we covered this a little bit earlier, but particularly where there is a contentious relationship after the divorce and the parents are in and out of court for years. And just to recap for Chris, just real quick, what Jessica and I had talked about, and then I'll have you elaborate on it. But thanks for watching, by the way, Chris. But one of the recapped items is that the texting can be captured and viewed by the lawyers, and that has actually improved communication. But I'm sure you've seen some other potential benefits there, Jessica.
Yeah, so I'll go in a different direction since we haven't covered this yet on the expense reimbursement side. So there are other tools out there that you could use to try to keep track of expenses that you need to have reimbursed. And most of the time when there's a drawn out custody battle, oftentimes there's a medical issue involving one of the children. It just so happens that those tend to be very stressful relationships, and then the children are in and out of the doctor. So say if you have a child with type 1 diabetes or something like that. So using this tool can help you keep track of that, help you make sure you're being reimbursed, help you not be as stressed out about not being reimbursed. And then the beauty is, with the click of a button, your lawyer can literally sort by medical or car insurance or all these different things or what's overdue. And we generate an Excel spreadsheet for them that'll have a chart of all those overdue expenses, the date they were incurred, the amount, when you submitted it for reimbursement, everything. And that takes 20 seconds on our platform, and would take a lawyer or someone in their office a couple of hours to put that together. And they need that for a motion to enforce, to get your money, or to insert it into a motion for the court. One of the other things that was really interesting that I had a lawyer client do, he was trying to show essentially that his client should maintain a disproportionate custody arrangement. And the husband or father was a good father, but traveled internationally quite a bit. And what he did is he took all those medical that she had been submitting, not to show the amount, but he used the spreadsheet generator to basically quickly put together a visual for the court of the date of all of those things. And he used it in questioning the father. Could you really get this child when, to all of these appointments? You would be kind of, on point for these. And he just said it was, and so he came up with an idea of how to use this from a totally different perspective. Similarly, I've thought about, if you're, again, on the medical expense side, did I get reimbursed from all that from the insurance? How much is this costing me? What's going on? These are ways that you can kind of self-audit some of that stuff as well.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. And, myself, I could see that from that father's standpoint. I could see myself going, I want more time with my kid, and then having it laid out in front of me and going, oh, maybe almost I see where I'm being a hypocrite, or I'm being emotional, that even though I want more time with my kid, I probably cannot get him realistically to all these things because I travel abroad. Right. So almost like, just feed it back to me. Now I can see all this in black and white. Maybe I need to ease up on this.
One other thing that we're in what I call alpha testing. So it's not really in beta. It's still kind of me and our developer testing it, is our calendar feature, which we thought that we needed in order to compete with some other folks. But one thing that we're doing differently on the calendar is that for each appointment that's on there, doesn't matter who puts it on, if you're on if you're linked together, you will get an ICS calendar appointment, calendar creator and invitee. No other tools are doing that. So the problem is if I need to know if I can attend this, I have to know my work schedule. I have to look, and then I would have to go somewhere else to see, do I have anything going on for the kids that day? Right. So this is a tool that makes it, again, really efficient, really easy for the parents. If you're the person who has to put in the soccer games, you're going to be really annoyed if you've got to put them in a tool over there And then you also have to put them on your actual calendar so your assistant or someone else doesn't schedule you during that time and you actually show up to the games. So we're trying to do some, we're trying to create some efficiencies in the way that we handle this, that we don't lock it down so much from an evidentiary perspective that it's actually not useful.
Right. Very cool. Very cool. Hope that answers the question, Chris. Thanks for it. Travis Luther's here as well. Thank you, Travis. Nabil is watching. Nabil is the CEO of experts.com, and this show is sponsored by experts.com because I'm in the experts.com office right now. So, so we are sponsored by them. And Jessica, any last minute comments, that anything we didn't cover tonight that you'd like to cover?
You know, I think that the main thing that we are trying to do with FamilyDocket is to take advantage of the technologies that exist and make the divorce process easier for all of those involved. I think we all realize how emotional it can be for the clients and how expensive. And I think we sometimes forget, and Erin's probably someone who could comment on this very well, how emotionally draining it can be for the lawyers. And so the better able the clients are to communicate with each other and with their lawyer, the better everyone is off, you know, in the situation. You know, you learn a lot of things that, you know, you don't necessarily want to know as a family lawyer, and it can be tolling, and you have empathy for these folks. I think if you don't, you're not probably a very good family lawyer, but you can't have so much empathy that it drags you down. But the more that you can create this process, that things are easier and smoother for everybody involved, you know, I think in the long run, everyone ends up with a healthier perspective on the entire situation.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think that was something I was trying to get across. You communicated that very well. I think I was trying to say that earlier when we were talking about the communication being monitored, and then all of a sudden people are being a little bit more civil. Yeah. You know, it just makes the entire process better. Jessica, thank you. Tell us now where we can find you, or where we can find FamilyDocket.
So our website is www.familydocket.com. And then additionally, you can find me on LinkedIn, or at FamilyDocket on LinkedIn, or at FamilyDocket on Facebook or Instagram. And both the Facebook and LinkedIn have a lot of videos of some of the different features. So if you actually wanted to see a quick, 15-second video of how a text message capture works on your phone, and then translates over into looking at how it would look, on the desktop or on your phone in the FamilyDocket app, you can see those things really easily, and it might give you a good taste for it. And if you want to reach me, it's jessica.hoffmann with 2 F's and 2 N's at FamilyDocket.com.
Excellent. Thank you. So our guest tonight was Jessica Hoffmann of FamilyDocket, and that's FamilyDocket.com. Check them out. Thank you, Jessica, for being here. Thank you, Jessica. I have to tell you guys, she is on it for a CEO. She hammered. We could not get connected, and she just kept hammering away at me, and until we were finally both able to connect on the phone, and that was very much appreciated. So I'm confident that the sales will continue to improve with that kind of persistence.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. And don't disappear when we stop recording. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Sajish, thank you. Chris, Travis, Nabil, Daza Greenwood showed up. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Jessica. This has been episode 63. Stay tuned for the replay, and stay tuned. Next week we're off, but the following week we'll be back with episode 64. Bye-bye.